Cecelia and I are married and we are Jewish.
Hello, I'm Dawn. I'm Jewish too.
Hello, I'm Cecelia. Being Jewish for me is a very important part of my life, and I was lucky enough, I believe, to have married a very special Jewish man. Dave here, because that doesn't always happen. Being Jewish gets more important as you get older, and it's nice to know there is some form of remembrance of the Jewishness that we as Jews have gone through in our lives.
When I was young and approaching my bar mitzvah, I began questioning what Jewishness means. It began to mean to me to be more what I call it, tradition, rather than religion.
Tradition!
Tradition! Tradition! Tradition! Okay.
For me, Jewishness is Shabbat dinner around the table, being together with everybody.
And the house, and the children.
It means more to me to be ritual rather than religion.
I am sad when people poo-poo the religion away. Whatever you do, hang on to something, because you never know when you're going to need it again. Something can happen in your life, and you're going to need that strength, and sometimes it comes with a bit of help from religion. From whatever you believe, the man up above, the dog in the corner, I don't know. It doesn't really matter what you believe in. But as long as you have something that will help you, thank you, doggy. And I know who helps me through, and I'm not just talking about Dave. I'm talking about the ethereal higher power, or just someone up there that sometimes I know can help me, because life is pretty rough at times, and it can be. And it can be pretty amazing too.
Well, I was brought up far away from the Jewish community. We lived at Ottawa. There was hardly any Jewish people at that time there. I'm the youngest of 9. I always knew I was Jewish, and we always had the right thing. But I didn't go to synagogue until I was married, and I married a very Jewish man, which brought out more from me. We weren't ultra-religious or anything. I think being Jewish means a lot to me in a positive way.
So, what else counts as positive in your lives?
Meeting Dave. What would my life have been like if I hadn't met Dave? The turning point in my life was meeting him, and it happened because of a car accident in Johannesburg, South Africa. I was about 18. I had just left school. I was in hospital for over a month after the accident. It was very traumatic because they didn't know if I was going to walk properly and all sorts of things again. And thank God, here I am today, and it's fine. So yeah, I'm very grateful for the accident, to be very honest, because it started a chain of events that wouldn't have happened without it. The guy who ran into me, his friend, had a friend, and they came to visit me, and one of them was Dave. I get goosebumps when I talk about it. The drama that went with it changed my life completely. And when I recovered, I went out and got a job at the Johannesburg Public Library. I ended up doing all sorts of things in my own way, and I had an amazing career, including virtually running half the company. It was all really exciting and fulfilling. And Dave's job allowed me to do this away from home. Dave is always amazing. He lifts me all the time, not physically.
He probably used to lift you physically, but not now.
My children love Dave far more than they love me. I was far too strict. But it worked out well. And it's just interesting how one little turn in the road changes you completely.
No. So we're on to 13, I think now. This one. The main fork.
I think the main fork in my road was basically when I left university. I had studied the medical sciences. I left because I wasn't the brightest student, and it was costing my folks a lot of money. I decided I would look for a job. I was looking in the newspaper, and as an advert for a medical representative caught my eye. I had no idea what it meant, so I phoned, and the lady said to me, "Give me some background." I said, "Well, I studied the medical sciences." "What did you study?" "I studied anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry." And she said, "Well, you've got the job." "Should I come for an interview?" "No," she said. "We have all the qualifications required for the job. Just come next Monday and meet the sales manager," which I did. To cut a long story short, I ended up being one of a group of medical salesmen who launched the birth control tablet in 1960. Well, I'm giving
What you're saying.
what I'm saying is that I had turned lemon into lemonade. I had taken advantage of what I had learned and got the most wonderful job, which I had for 4 years. It was the only time in my life that I felt a man of influence.
My turning point was when I met my husband. The way I met him at a dance. I was with a couple of my girlfriends, and suddenly I saw, right from the other side of the room, this fellow walking over to me. And he came, and we got talking. He took me home, and next day I took him to meet Mum. And a week later, we were engaged. I think we kissed that first night.
Oh, that is such a beautiful story, Dawn.
I was with my two girlfriends that lived across the road from me. And he walked the three of us home.
And he made sure that you were the last one.
Then he went off, and he stood with me, and we spoke for a while.
Spoke? That's the word they used in those days. Spoke. When did you get married?
Mum said we had to have a long engagement. We were married a month later.
You came to Montefiore, Dawn, because of your husband, but he passed away here. What a big loss for you.
We all face loss during our lives. There's loss leaving your home where you had choice. There's loss coming to a place like this. But you can also create new contacts, new relationships, and a different sense of home.
So, Don, you wrote a beautiful poem about feeling at home here when you first came to Montefiore, The Kookaburra and Me. Can you read it for us?
Welcome, welcome, I am here. I bring you good cheer, the kookaburra said to me, as I stood under the big tree and listened to it with glee. It laughed and then it went. A happy time I had spent. It gave me a sense of belonging. It was right to be here.
Moving here can take time to find some new friends. You still got those special feelings for long-time friends. And sometimes I've noticed with some acquaintances of mine who start making new friends that they're almost embarrassed to be happy.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There was 9 of us. I was the youngest of 9, brothers and sisters. Now they are all gone. Weirdest feeling, it is strange. Just being me. I am the oldest and youngest now.
Wow, you are now the oldest and the youngest at once.
It makes me feel bad.
I have no reason to feel bad, but when you've been moved to a place like Monty, where you may not have wanted to come to, well, it has turned out so very well. That's good. And just aging. There's parts of this aging that sucks.
I agree.
I agree too, I'm not a spring chicken, I get it.
It just sucks. I mean, here I am in my 80s, and oh my goodness, you know.
Oh, that's me. If I've got it right, you are all expressing this just slight sense of uneasiness to do with ageing and dislocation and being here at Monty. But then there's the experience which you, Cecelia, and Dave have had of moving from one country to another, which is a big dislocation.
It was very daunting, but I think I managed okay, and it was good.
So how old were the two of you when you moved from Joburg to Sydney?
65. When we moved here.
He was 65. Wow, that's a big adjustment because Australia is not South Africa, no.
I was about 60 when we moved to Australia, and I had to learn to drive to places. I mean, it was terrifying, but I did it, navigating a big city like Sydney. There was one first meeting I attended for my job, and this guy stood up and spoke. I could not understand one word he was saying. And I said to the girl next to me, "What language is he talking?" And she burst out laughing. It was just his way of talking. The way he said it, I could not pick up one word. I was so embarrassed. The Australian accent. Funny now, but it was not so funny then. You know, having come from a country where I was like a big deal, and now I felt like a stupid little woman.
Moving does things to our sense of self and our sense of identity, and it takes a while to locate and settle, doesn't it?
No, I managed and ended up finding a job at the Australian Jewish News. You know, I just fell into it, and they liked me, and I liked them.
So, Dave, did you have similar experiences to Cecelia about adjusting to Australia? I didn't realise you'd moved so well late in life.
Look, we were very lucky. We came to Australia every couple of years to see the children before we settled here. And it was pretty much like South Africa. Sorry?
Yes, but then we were with family and friends. But when I came here to work, it was working with people who were Australian. And I'm sure they're really, really nice. But it took me quite a long time to understand them. It was difficult. It was the language. It wasn't easy for me. It was easier for Dave. Maybe because he worked with people from a Jewish background, it was better. But I didn't. Yeah. And they'd say, like, go down to Canberra. I had to get in the car and drive down to Canberra. Canberra. How am I going to get there? It worked out okay, but it was terrifying. And you know, when you're older, it's not so easy to be you.
Yeah. Yeah, imagine if we said, Dawn, you're going to South Africa to live now.
No way, Jose.
We were the final 2 people of our family unit to come over. 3 children were here, the 6 grandchildren were here, all waiting for us. Oh, I got all goosebumps. And I used to lie in bed at night, that last few hours, a few months before we came, and just cry.
I would cry at school at lunchtime when we were having our lunch out on the ground, and all the children would call out, Grandma Chew, Grandma Chew. I was 10.
Ooh, you wrote a poem about that too, Dawn. I know you find it difficult to remember the experience and even more difficult to speak the poem, so I'm going to read it out for you. Grandma Jew, Grandma Jew. I didn't want to believe it was true. It hurts still, though I'm 92. It makes me feel very blue. It happened at school when I was 10. It should never have happened then.
I had one girlfriend in my class. She lived near me, and we used to go to school together. But now I come to think of it, when we were at school, we didn't have anything to do with each other. She didn't stick up for me or anything. I never thought of that before.
No wonder we all love you so much now, Dawn. That was such a terribly traumatic experience you had.
It was. And you know what? I never ever told Mum. I don't know why. I just kept it to myself. Oh God, I think it must have felt as though I didn't want to spread that.
Yeah, it was your fault or something. Because at that stage of one's life, you can't put yourself into, it's not my fault, because you can't understand. Because at that age, this is something that's never happened to you before. So you think, I must have done something wrong. Were there any other Jewish children at the school?
We lived in Alloa. There were hardly any Jewish people at that time there. Now there's a shul there.
So why did your parents decide to settle in Alloa?
I don't know. Most Jewish people came to the eastern suburbs. My father worked as a travelling salesperson, going from door to door, mainly selling clothes, children's clothes. I remember someone liked the socks I had on at school, and I went home at lunchtime and got some from my dad's collection, brought them back and sold them.
You were a salesperson at that age.
That era was a very hard era for a lot of people. When you think about our parents and what they had to go through. I mean, my dad was a linotype operator. They used to set up the printing type for whatever was going into the paper. And I ended up in papers working for a new Jewish newspaper. My mother played the violin. We never had a proper supper. A bowl of milk with a piece of bread and sugar on top for supper. And we thought this was absolutely fantastic. That was what we had. And I mean, we didn't complain. We didn't know anymore. And Pesach, my mother used to hang the cheese up in a muslin bag on the washing line. And the juice would drop out. And that's what we used to have. Just the weirdest things. You know, we actually were really poor.
My father worked full time. He worked for a company that represented mainly Jewish farmers east of Johannesburg. He was a produce merchant, and he would leave very early in the morning and catch 2 trams to go to work called the potato market. My father would have to be there very early to see the potatoes come off the train, and he would check the quality of the potato and count the bags. Then an auction would be held. People would make their bids and take bags of potatoes away. He had to make sure that all the bags were paid for and were taken away by the buyer. He started there in 1920. He was 17. He was born in 1903.
Wow, 17.
And that's what he did for many years.
Lifetime of potatoes.
Well, they closed the business. When they closed the business, he really was about somewhere between 60 and 65. The tragedy that was when, in those days, there were no pensions paid, not by the company nor by the government. So virtually he was left without any source of money. He had to find a job. Eventually he found one as a clerk. He worked until he died. My mother was a homemaker and a wonderful cook. She supported him in every way she could to make sure that when he left in the morning, he had sandwiches and a glass of coffee. When he returned in the evening, my mom made sure there would be a delightful hot dinner for him. We were really usually able to eat dinner together.
My mother was brought up in Ireland. My mother was from Dublin and my father was from Belfast. My mother was a travelling violinist and my father heard her play, and then they got married. We lived in Belfast. I was born there in 1942. There was bombing in Belfast during the war. When the first lot of bombs came down, my father started stammering. He couldn't speak from fear, from fright, whatever it was. But as a little girl growing up, I used to think this was so funny, and I remember laughing at him. My mother smacked me across the face. She said, "Don't disrespect your father." But I was a little baby girl, and I just thought it was very funny. I thought she was playing a game, and my mother was hitting me. I'm not angry about it with my parents now, though it took me quite a while to actually understand what it meant. Another Belfast memory is lying with my granny and singing songs. She used to hang her chickens on the toilet door, which was outside, to get rid of all the blood in the chicken. They were killed and then hung up, so all the blood ran away. Charming. We moved from Belfast to South Africa, where my mother's sisters were. The two aunties had moved over to Pretoria because my auntie Bessie had married a doctor who came for some reason to Ireland and fell in love with Bessie and took her to South Africa. They were trying to get my mother and father to come over, which took quite some time. But coming over to Pretoria, all of a sudden, we were living in a magic world with auntie and uncle, and I was the eldest cousin. I was the boss. I was very good at being bossy. And I can remember opening a fridge door in my aunt's place when I first arrived. Never seen anything like its food content. You know, food and meat and fruit. It was just unbelievable. Such a strong memory I have of that.
Memories and telling stories make me very happy.
Talking to family and friends and communicating in community makes me happy.
I always like to have something in my life that I can do for others, whatever it is. Something that makes me happy. It might be reading a book or just talking to people. But I find that at this stage of my life, there's not much more anyone can do. But there's not much I can do for people anymore. I used to read to people in aged care homes. I mean, that would be so nice to do again.
I used to do that with Rockdale Council. I've done quite a lot of volunteering for Rockdale Council. We used to go to homes and get their messages and, talk to them and so on. They were mostly older people confined to homes who couldn't get out. I used to go to Rainwood Montford too, just communicating with people, talking with them, being present and having chat.
I think it's something that I would still like to do. I enjoyed reading a book in the voices of the characters and that type of thing. I read to someone at the Monte Willara, but I didn't have much time to do those things because I was working full-time, mainly in the book trade, with travel and all sorts of things. Dave was working from home with his collectible book business, and it opened my ability to work a full-time job. And yes, it was great. It worked well for both of us. He was the daddy at home, and I was the mother who went out and did whatever I had to do in the book trade. Yeah, that's how we worked.
I just did shop work when I left school. I worked at Coles, just in shop. I wasn't a brainy person at all.
You are putting yourself down again, June. I'm going to stone, I'm going to smack you.
She didn't smack.
Come on, Dawn, you're a very right woman. She's very creative, isn't she?
Yes, she is. Yay. You've told us about your work life, Dave. Dave, you've told us about your work life. What about volunteering? Did you do that?
I volunteered for care of the aged, delivering kosher meals to customers on the North Shore. I would meet, usually when I came to the North Shore, I would meet another volunteer and we would split up the meals. On a particular morning, he didn't turn up, so I was on my own. It was a very big job. I had to deliver meals from Clinton Gardens all over to the west. When I got to Habersfield in the west, I gave the customer his bag of meals, and he said to me, "Dave, you've made a mistake. I had given him the wrong parcel. The parcel he received was the one for the customer at Clinton Gardens." So I took the parcel all the way back to Clinton Gardens and took the other parcel back to my customer at Habersfield. And I must tell you another story. For Jewish Care, I used to play chess with a survivor, and he actually said to me, "Why are you playing with me?" So I said, "Well, the organisation that told me that somebody wanted to play chess." He said, "Well, you don't know how to play chess." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, you sure? So you're playing a very easy game." He had checkmated me in 2 or 3 moves. And I said, "Well, we can still play, and you can teach me how to play properly." The volunteering experiences were very special, but we were even more blessed to be part of a close-knit family that mostly lived in the Eastern Suburbs.
Our families and friends are so giving and so caring. We are extremely blessed. It is just very special. Hey, Dad.
Yes, it couldn't have been better.
The end. But we have one special finale, and that is, I was given to one of the members of the other group I run here, which is, changes its name all the time, Feet of Fun. And somebody who's sitting here, who I'm not allowed to mention, handed this to me, that she received it, and we're going to have Mrs. Bouquet, Mrs. Bartlett, from Keeping Up Appearances. And she's going to just finish with this lovely...
One month before her 95th birthday, Dame Patricia Routledge wrote something that I would like to share with you all. I will be turning 95 this coming Monday, and in my younger years I was often filled with worry that I wasn't quite good enough, and no one would cast me again, and I wouldn't live up to my mother's hopes. But these days begin in peace and end in gratitude. My life didn't quite take shape until my 40s. I had worked steadily on provincial stages, in radio plays, in West End productions, but I often felt adrift, as though I was searching for a home within myself that I had not yet found. At 50, I accepted a television role that many would later associate with me, Hyacinth Bouquet of Keeping Up Appearances. I thought it would be a small part, a small little one in a series. I never imagined it would take me into people's living rooms and hearts around the world. And truthfully, that role taught me to accept my own quirks. It healed something in me. At 60, I started learning Italian. Not for work, but so I could sing opera in its native language. I also learned how to live alone without being lonely. And I read poetry aloud each evening, not to perfect my addiction, but to quiet my soul. At 70, I returned to the Shakespearean stage, something I once believed I had aged out of. But this time, I had nothing to prove. I stood on those boards with stillness, and audiences felt that I was no longer performing, I was simply being. At 80, I took up watercolor painting. I painted flowers from my garden, from my youth and faces I remembered from the London Underground. Each painting a quiet memory made visible. Now at 95, I write letters by hand. I'm learning to make rye bread. I breathe deeply every morning. I still adore laughter, though I no longer try to make anyone laugh. I love the quiet more. And I'm writing this to tell you something simple. Growing older is not the closing act. It can be most exquisite chapter if you let yourself bloom again. Let these years ahead be your treasure years. You don't need to be famous. You don't need to be flawless. You only need to show up fully for the life that is still yours. With love and gentleness, Patricia
Very good.